We learnt a valuable lesson this weekend. What happens when you try to wheelie a MotoGP bike at 120 miles an hour? Welcome back to Motorsport 101. And in other news, Marco Bezzecchi wins 5 in a row, but that's not as important, apparently. Welcome to episode 649 of Motorsport 101. I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison. Glad you could join us. And it's a bit weird to be recording this on a Sunday, but here we are. Happy Easter, everybody. I hope you guys had a lovely and a peaceful Easter break. Some of you had the time off, some of you haven't. I hope you got able to stuff your face with some chocolate. It's always a good time, and all of that. Meanwhile, me and Cameron Buckley, who's to my left, are going to be doing some podcasting as he do, because we have a pretty heaped MotoGP podcast to get through, because a lot went down in Austin this weekend, so much so we had to split these up. But I mean, Cam, it was quite the home weekend for as MotoGP headed for Austin, which I guess is now home.
Only kind of, because, I mean, for myself, it's about as far away in this country as it can get without it being a racetrack over in California.
More or less, but I guess if you're talking about Liberty, I guess it's their home race now, which is funny. Apparently, there was a lot of Liberty media in attendance this weekend, seeing how their home round functions, and allegedly...
Well, the secret is that a lot of them didn't really want this purchase and needed to be convinced.
Yeah, it was actually quite a tense, sort of build-up for this weekend for that very reason, because it was David Emmett, credit to him on Moto Matters, that put it out there during the Brazil weekend that apparently a lot of higher-ranking Liberty media officials were like, we've massively overpaid for this, which
they kind of did, in the grand scheme of things.
Given that the teams have next to no value whatsoever, £3.5 billion for MotoGP feels steep. Just a thought. But we'll break down some of those feelings alongside what ended up being, I guess you could say, a flagship weekend for Aprilia. Their main riders split in victories. Jorge Martin takes his first sprint win since coming back from his horrible injuries of the last year and change. And then Marco Bezzecchi would break an all-time MotoGP record en route to his 5th win in a row, if you want to go back across consecutive seasons. Just the third man in the modern era of MotoGP to do so. I mean, any club you're in that's only got Valentino Rossi and Marc Marquez, and it can't be too bad, I suppose.
Right.
You know, it's why not Bez? And, well, have Aprilia finally arrived? We'll be talking about that, how another Aprilia very nearly stole the show this past weekend, a boatload of silly season rumours, and another wacky weekend in the world of Marc Marquez, because if nothing else, Marc Marquez is never boring. Ever. Not in a million years. So all of that and much more over the next 45 minutes or so. But before we do that, here's where you can find us if you didn't know already. We're on youtube.com/motorsport101. We're on facebook.com/motorsport101. We're on Twitter at motorsport_101. If you want to follow our personal handles, you could do so at Dre Harrison 101 and cbuckley917. If you want some extra video highlights of the show and some occasional short form content from yours truly, you can follow us on our Instagram page at motorsport101pod and on our TikTok M101_podcast. You can find us on there as well. Our website, Motorsport 101, is available if you want to catch DRRs on all 3 of that Banzai triple header weekend we had. A Formula One over in Japan, which is probably the best DRI I've ever written. I think that's up there. Thanks for all the kind words on Blue Sky in regards to that. I didn't think it would get the kind of reaction that it did. There's also some words on this very weekend and IndyCar over in Barber, because Christian Lundgaard was denied nice things thanks to a McLaren pit crew. Always a fun time.
It's a shame, actually. I was not able to be on the Suzuka IndyCar double because you probably still hear it. Still trying to kick out a sinus infection, which is a shame. I actually had a lot to say about Suzuka and not much to say about IndyCar. I mean, Alex Palou wins, lol. Despite Christian Lundgaard's best efforts.
There is an Ask Us Anything edition of Motorsport 101 next week on this very platform. So, hey, if you've got some questions you want to get in for any of us on the show about just about anything to do with the show or any of the series we cover, including some sports cars, because we got RJ and Cam in the house as well, feel free to get those in wherever you like on social media, and we can do that. And you can have Cam's unfiltered opinion about race cars. It's there. The option is yours. Grab it.
As if I'm not unfiltered enough when I'm on here.
I'm giving you an open invitation. Do not let us down. If you want to back us financially on Patreon, you can do so at patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all of our episodes. You can upgrade to the $10 tier to listen to these episodes live as they are being recorded, as Jason, Vic, and Max are doing right now. Thank you very much for listening, fellas. Much appreciated. And thanks for your ongoing support. Right, without further ado, let's get into the 2026 MotoGP United States Grand Prix. First up, and we have to kind of address this, one of the most insane sprints, maybe the greatest sprint in MotoGP history in the short time we've had this format. We had Marc Marquez and Fabio Di Giannatonio taking each other out on the opening lap after Di Gia took a surprise back-to-back pole position after the Brazilian Grand Prix. He's only ever had 4 career pole positions in nearly 200 starts, and he's had 2 of them in the last week and a half, as you do. Pecco Bagnaia, though, took the early hole shot, had a 1.5 second lead at his peak. The main man chasing him down was championship leader Marco Bezzecchi, until he crashed out at turn 11. Out of nowhere, he completely misses his braking spot, tucks the front at turn 11, down he goes, which means Jorge Martin is now in second place, and all of a sudden, on the final lap, Jorge Martin is only 0.4 of a second behind, and we're like, hang on a minute, this isn't done. And with a perfect block pass at turn 12 on the final lap, Jorge Martin takes the sprint, takes the all-time sprint race record back off Marc Marquez, who we had to share it with after Brazil. His 17th sprint victory, his first win of any kind in 497 days, ahead of Bagnaia, and I would say Pedro Acosta, but he was flagged for a tyre pressure breach, dropping him.
That old chestnut.
Yeah, it's back with a vengeance. He dropped from third
tires
to 8th, and as a result, a surprise podium and the first in the Gunther Steiner era for Tech 3 as Enea Bastianini took a surprise sprint podium.
Yeah, remember that guy?
Yeah, that guy. Remember him? What guy? That guy. Enea Bastianini third over the line after the post-sprint penalty. It meant, for a day at least, Jorge Martin was world championship leader again. Whoever would have guessed that a year and a half ago? My goodness.
Now, you're saying all of these things, and these all sound pretty cool. I mean, Jorge Martin, it's the world is a better place when Jorge Martin is healthy and fighting at the front of a MotoGP field. However, before he got back to celebrate his sprint win, something happened where he was so thrilled with his return to the top step of the podium that he did a wheelie going down the very bumpy, curved, hilly backstretch at Coda, and he crashed the bike.
These bikes, so those who don't know, because every podcast is somebody's first, these bikes aren't really designed to wheelie anymore.
They have a system to snap their own chassis in half, and they put the power down. So no, they're not.
Yeah, like we have anti-wheelie electronics, and we've had them for a very long time in MotoGP for precisely this reason. So the bike didn't quite know what to do with itself when Jorge Martin is wheeling that sucker up in the air, and this is about 120 miles an hour. This is not slow. He's pouring it on down the back straight. Apparently Martin knew the moment he was about halfway up that this is not going to go well. So he was like, okay, because apparently his rear wheel was spinning because the anti-wheelie was kicking in, trying to cut the power while he's manually trying to apply it. So he's trying to now upshift rapidly to stop the wheel spin from happening. And even when he got to fifth gear, he puts the wheel down. The front's like, I'm not supposed to do this. Down he goes in mildly embarrassing fashion. It wouldn't be Jorge Martin without some bullshit now, would it?
Can you imagine if that put him out for the race weekend?
The humiliation on that if he'd injured him. Because
so dumb.
That was not a low-speed crash. That was a quick one. That could have been so much worse. Two
brain cells fighting for third place, but the man is fast.
And that's the beauty and the horror of Jorge Martin in one very entertaining nutshell. Because, I mean, say what you will about him, that was a thrilling comeback, to say the least. And, what a return to form that was, Cam. I mean, that was a great performance from Martin. I love also as well, Martin wanted to give credit to his medium tyre choice because he was the only man in the field who was on a medium rear tyre. But that wasn't the reason why he was so quick at the end.
No. The reason he was so quick at the end is because we had mentioned Pecco Bagnaia. Also good to see him fighting at the front again. Also good to see. For a time. He had not a tire wear problem in the sprint, but a tire effectively starting to delaminate problem on the back of his bike, where he is pretty much keeping a healthy second and a half gap all the way through, and then his pace dropped off a cliff the final 2 laps.
It was a vibration, according to him. It was the last 5 laps that he felt his rear tire vibrating, and he was trying to nurse the problem home. It was only really, according to him, the final 2 laps where it got really catastrophically bad. And a 1.2 second lead he had with 2 laps to go pretty much evaporated. That would have been a sprint win for Pecco. Easy. I think that would have been a comfortable victory for him if it wasn't for that. But, at least for a time, he gave us a bit of hope about Pecco as well. And hey, he gave us the funny afterwards, because afterwards on the podium celebration, when he was asked in second about, what happened at the end there, he goes, "Fucking bastard, Jorge." It was like 2024 had come back for a day. It was great. The two old rivals at it again. It was a nice breath of fresh air to see those two battling for a win, and an inch perfect block pass as well from Martin in that final lap to get it done, Cam.
Yeah, I mean, forget the man is a MotoGP world champion. He just hasn't been here for a bit because he's been injured. But he has started off this year very, very well because he's still relatively a rookie on this bike. He's the least experienced person on the RSGP by a country mile. Everyone else there has a lot more just time with the bike than him. And the fact that he's been able to have his preseason go all the way through and pretty much just be within a 10th or 2 of Bez, who has been the gold standard thus far. Bez needs to stop dropping it in the sprints.
It's looking a little bit Pecco-esque in the sense of, maybe not. Maybe Pecco wasn't crashing every sprint race, even at his worst last year. But it's easy points you're leaving on the table, because Aprilia would be even further out in front right now if it wasn't for the fact that Bez has only scored points in 1 sprint race so far this season out of 3.
Yeah, and it came as a product of him trying to go get Pecco. Now, ironically, he would have got Pecco anyway with the tire issue, but he was trying to put in qualifying laps, trying to cut a 1.5 second gap down with a couple laps to go. That was just uncouth.
Yeah, I think Bez admitted after the fact that he was at the limit on his Aprilia trying to chase down Pecco, and I'm like, you're not
visibly so.
Yeah, you're not beating him with a 1.5 second deficit with 4 laps left. Take your second. That's what a smart rider would do.
If he had calmed down and taken the points, he would have actually won because Pecco's tires still would have gone. But he would not have known that. But it's almost like he himself doesn't believe necessarily that he's a title contender this year. And so he's still just going for broke every time.
Yeah, I think you might very well be right, because it's like every time everybody's asked a question to Bez, like, do you think you can win the world championship? Are you a world title contender? He's always tried to play it down. He's always been like, well, it's too early, it's too soon. No, I think Mark's still the heavy favorite. It's weird. It's almost like he's almost too humble about, which is a weird thing to say about a MotoGP rider, or to say about someone who has a couple of top threes in the championship in his career already. Did it back in 2022, and obviously last year when he was third on the Aprilia overall. Why? Like we've said, the phrase we've joked for years is, why not Bez? Why not Bez this year? He's now, at least in my opinion, the favorite to win this championship. Why not? Given the way that he's been, the way that Aprilia's been, I find it bizarre that he's almost talking himself down when he's been so good this season. It's weird.
I think he himself wants a bigger sample size, and like we're getting a big enough sample size now where we can say Aprilia are, for the most part, here. Not every single box on that checklist is ticked, but they're going down the list. It's a good thing for him, though, that Martin hasn't been quite as fast in race trim, because if Martin can perform the way he does in sprints and keep performing the way he does so far in race trim, there's no reason why Martin can't be heavy championship favorite, especially because he's getting closer to Bez week in and week out as he gains time and experience on the spike. So you'd hear them both play themselves down because of their respective circumstances, despite Aprilia's start to the year. It's just a good thing for Bez that consecutive laps led doesn't happen to include sprint races.
No. You forget, this is only Jorge Martin's 10th weekend on that Aprilia.
Yeah.
Period. And he missed the entirety of the 2025 offseason with those injuries that he suffered. Pretty much all of preseason testing. So, it's not an exaggeration to say that Martin is thousands of kilometers short compared to Bez and the other Aprilias when it comes to just outright mileage clocked. So for Martin to be competitive and to be, I mean, there's no doubt in my mind he's a championship contender now. Why can't he be? He's got the paces there. As Jason's alluded, he has the best average finish so far of anybody in the field. He's been the consistent Aprilia so far this season. The wins haven't shown up yet, apart from obviously the sprint win that we had in Austin. But the results are there. The pace is there. He's only going to get faster on this thing as he gets more and more experienced on it. Like, Massimo Rivera is going to have a quite difficult job handling the fact that he's going to likely have two title contenders to have to juggle with over the course of this season.
One of whom is already out of the team by all accounts, because by all accounts they've signed Pecco for next year, and Martin is off to Yamaha.
I still can't believe he's going to be. Martin's 29 next year. He's going to be giving up his prime years for the Yamaha project.
Yeah, good luck with that, buddy.
What has he done? What has he done?
Guess we can say the only thing that we're going to mention about Yamaha this podcast is that we can confirm that they did take part in this Grand Prix weekend. And Top Rack was top Yamaha.
He was great. Genuinely great weekend from Top Rack. Nearly made Q2 outright, was going, I think he peaked at 10th in the sprint early on before a technical problem maligned his race. It wasn't a rider crash, it was a technical problem, and was 15th in the Grand Prix. So guys, he got his first Grand Prix points. So good for Top Rack. Honestly, genuinely, from what I've been told, he's impressed a lot of people in that paddock so far at how quick he's been able to adapt to the Yamaha, and the fact he's competitive alongside some very experienced teammates in Quartararo, Rins, and Miller. There's a boatload of experience there in that setup, and Top Rack's on their level already.
Yeah, and then you have Alex Rins, who followed up the weekend with the quote of the year, I think, so far, which is, and I'm quoting here, "What the fuck am I doing here?" Which I think just tells you everything you need to know about where the Yamaha V4 project is right now. They were last. They were the worst of a bad bunch at the back.
And I'm not sure if that one's better or worse than Fabio Quartararo's post-weekend quote of Yamaha has no idea how to fix its problems.
One is a little bit more diplomatically said, I would say.
Yes, that is alarming in the case of Fabio. We already know that Fabio's got 1.5 feet out of the door, but this breakup is going to be ugly on the way out by the looks of it. It's not going to be an amicable split because Fabio's now not holding back about what he thinks about Yamaha, the camp, and where it's going, because he's laid it out pretty straight that this team is shit right now. And, well, Top Brack was top Yamaha. Let's ignore the fact he was 25 seconds off the winning bike. That's
in a 20-lap race.
That's 1.2 seconds per lap across the 20-lap race.
Stinky motorcycle.
Speaking of the Grand Prix, it was much of the story that we'd seen before, really. Marco Bezzecchi, despite starting fourth, he had a 2-place grid penalty for blocking Marc Marquez in qualifying. He still led off the opening lap. He an angry shoulder barge, shall we say, to Pedro Acosta at turn 11.
Well, it wasn't a shoulder barge until it very suddenly was, because Pedro misses the corner, rejoins, and Bez more or less does the biking equivalent of dooring him on the way by.
Yeah, very NASCAR-esque. But both some aero bits fell off both bikes, but both were able to continue relatively fine. And he led every single lap of this race. He only needed to lead 3 to set a new MotoGP record. He led all 20 to push that record now out to 121 consecutive laps led. He'd take a comfortable victory ahead of his teammate Jorge Martin by a couple of seconds. Pedro Acosta was third. Fabio Di Giannatonio was top Ducati again in fourth. But you could breathe a bit of a sigh of relief because our hard-charging Ayagura was gunning him down until his bike died on lap 15 with a technical problem. As for Marc Marquez...
Really frustrating for me, man. Like, Ayagura, this was his best weekend in MotoGP. He was on fire all weekend. Phenomenal race pace. And then had it was an engine electronic issue in the Grand Prix. I mean, podium contender. I think struck out of the field.
I think third was very much on. A fourth at a bare minimum for Agura, which would have easily been his best Grand Prix result of his career to date. Massimo Rivola, in a very classy fashion, actually went away from Aprilia's main garage in the middle of their celebration to apologise to Trackhouse on behalf of the brand for the technical error. He's a good man, Massimo. I'll give him that. As for Marc Marquez, in case you're wondering where he ended up, his long lap penalty he got for the sprint crash of Di Giannatonio we mentioned earlier dropped into 11th, but he went on a hard charge at the end to finish in 5th. Where do we even start on this one? I mean, there is a lot to break down here. I mean, we talked a little bit about Bez already. I mean, if you give Bez the metronome and he gets out front, he can't be beaten right now. He's just too fast.
Yeah, I mean, he didn't have a great turn 1, and he just sliced right on through and was never really seen again. Martin could stick with his pace, but could never really make inroads with him. And there was only one other guy who was fast enough across the field to maybe trouble them. But as mentioned, Mark had a long lap penalty and pretty much had to spend the whole race fighting. Just could not get any part of the weekend clean, Mark. Couldn't get a clean lap in qualifying. He was either held up or made mistakes. And then messy sprint, and then messy race. And then second half of the race was really good. Bess is real fucking fast.
And it all, I think, stems back to that crash he had on Friday morning. The FP1, Mark admits he was pushing like he normally would, going down the hill at turn 10, like he's done every other year, not realizing there was a fresh bump where he would normally take his racing line.
Right on the racing line, right as you're leaned over, coming over the crest. Everyone was hitting it. Everyone's bike was leaping out of shape, but Marc Marquez does not do half measures.
No.
and went over that thing at 11 tenths and chucked. And like, we all saw the crash. It's like, well, how's he crashed there? We saw the replay. Oh,
the rear,
because it kicked the rear of the bike out, pushed the front down. Was not your typical death in taxes with the Ducati tucking the front. But that bashed his left hand up pretty well. And while he had speed, he just never looked comfortable this weekend. And I think that's a greater thing that I think we'll get into a little bit later in the show.
Why not address it now? Because we've already talked about it. I mean, that was a 115 mile an hour crash going over that bump. He went all the way to the air fence on the outside of turn 10. He was dinged up, but no fractures. He was lucky in a sense. I watched the Inside Ducati video analysing the weekend as was total, and there was an interesting quote that came out of it, Cam, where Mark says, the bike is critical, but so was I. And I wonder, and I think everybody's a little bit guilty of this, I think Mark's shoulder is a lot more dinged up than I think a lot of people let on. In regards to, I think a lot of us played it down when it initially happened.
They played it down because he was not going to have. Well, he wasn't going to have surgery on this. Let's remember, they were going to let this heal up naturally. Had he not already won the championship last year, the thought that was going to be that he was going to return last year if he needed to. Because remember, he had a 201 point gap in the championship. Yeah, had already mathematically clinched first. It's very interesting because he's said it there, but it's also been said elsewhere, like motorsport.com has talked about it. The race has talked about it, that Mark has kind of downplayed, like, no, the bike isn't the big issue right now. It's me. That it's his health and his position on the motorcycle. And he's still using the 2024 aero. He prefers the 2025 because he can get more lap time out of it, but it is more physical. It is harder on his shoulder to turn the bike, to get it leaned over in the fast stuff. And so he can't use that right now. That, I think, really is, we've now got this 3-week gap to Jerez. And Jerez, for me, is actually the bigger final hurdle for Aprilia, because Coda is normal on paper, and then the surface is very, very strange because, as mentioned, it's slowly turning into Texas sabering. Yes. Respect the bumps and such.
Yeah, everybody. It's built on swamp. No, it's built on swampland, and it gets very hot, even in April. And cold.
It's like stretching and breaking the track apart across the seasons there. Everybody has 10 gajillion miles at Jerez. Everyone knows every individual stone of asphalt at Jerez. That is the one that tends to be the template for the next 9 or 10 European rounds we go to. And that, for me, is the big question. That's a question mark with Marc Marquez and with Ducati. We've got a test there. This might be the last real technical development of the 1000cc Grand Prix motorcycle. Yeah, before we transition to the 850s. It's very interesting for me to hear Mark go, well, the bike isn't as much of a problem. I have to get right.
You forget that shoulder injury he suffered in Mandalika was nearly 6 months ago now. And
that's the kind of injury for normal people, because motorcycle racers are not normal people. And Marc Marquez is the most extra of all people to throw a leg over a bike. I did some reading up on this kind of injury, and that's the kind of thing where you don't really move that shoulder much for about 6 months. Let alone ride a motorcycle, let alone ride a 330 horsepower carbon fiber piss missile covered in wings and ground effect diffusers.
Yes, Max, it is the 4th major injury he's had on that side of his arm. Yes, it's not the same as the arm breaks he's had before, but it's still more trauma to a very sensitive part of his body.
Ligament. I mean, ligament damage is ligament damage. And I mean, we follow other sports. We follow basketball and the NFL and such. Ligaments are just as critical as bones, if not more so.
Yeah, exactly. And it's a lot of trauma. It's a lot of going under the knife. It's a lot of trying to figure this out. And this is the theme that Mark has been talking about for the last year and change. He knows his clock is limited because there is a lot of mileage on Marc Marquez. Yes, he's only 33, which is not that old for a bike racer.
It's been a hard 33. It's been a hard last 10, really.
You got to remember, this is also year 14, and he's had over an average amount of injuries for the average bike racer, even for someone who has done 13 full seasons in the Premier class. And I think a lot of us have played it down, whether it be Ducati themselves for not even trying to operate on it for the first month, the fact that the championship last year was already won, so it didn't feel like it was a pressing issue or a pressing priority, and the fact that we probably just assumed Mark would bounce back like this was no big deal without realizing he's 33. He's not Javon Evans. He's not bouncy anymore. There is a lot of wear and tear on that body. And Mark has said the one thing that would cause him to retire early would be his body failing him. And he knows he's if he was a cat, he's used 8.5 of his 9 lives. That's basically how I feel about this.
Right. Like he has, and really, it's been the last 10 years on the Michelins where his strategy turned into, I'm going to go out and practice and crash. And that's where the limit is. And then I know to push to 99.9% of that every lap. Eventually, you eventually fall into a sort of injury debt from that. And a lot more than he otherwise would have, had he just waited 2 months to come back from the arm break in 2020. Ultimately, hindsight is 2020, and he'd be the first person to tell you that was a stupid decision. Just ask the people over at Honda right now. But also, I think, looking back, it was a mistake to not operate on this for that first month last year. And I think they sort of underestimated it within Ducati's own camp because he'd be a month further along in the healing process and he could just be a little bit more comfortable on the bike. He gets 3 weeks off because of the events of the world that we have exhaustively talked about on this show. Good Lord, it's so stupid.
This is the month. This is the month back he would have gotten if he operated on it early. If anything, he's gotten lucky. He's got that month back that he decided not to take back in October.
He does, but if he had, that would be 2 extra months. So it is what it is. I think for me, Jerez is the final hurdle for everyone involved. Aprilia, can you take it to them and beat them with no mitigating circumstances? Can Ducati and Marc find a position for him on the bike with another month of healing where he can be whatever the best version of Marc Marquez is this year? Because he was the fastest man on track for the second half of a large portion of that COTA race. Yeah. And that was him cutting through traffic. Unk still got it. It's just that Unk has to not get caught up in the mess too early because he's just not comfortable on the bike in the early laps. It seems like Digia and Pecco can sort of brute force through that, but it means that they goose their tires earlier.
Yeah, it's a weird one where Ducati's most consistent rider so far this season has legitimately been Fabio Di Giannatonio, which I said on the Crash MotoGP podcast, that's sort of a Grand National bet you put on a 50-1 horse, you would not have predicted that going into this season at all. But here we are. I mean, like, this GP26 is clearly not slow. It's just, it needs... for me, it highlights the development process between Aprilia and Ducati. Aprilia has been chipping away at this now for the last 3 or 4 years, thinking, is this going to be the one? Is this going to be the one? This looks like this is the one for Aprilia. It looks like all of their combined tech and development work, that they're a Formula One team in all but name when it comes to some of the resources they've got and the technology that they're using. Man, let's not forget, Massimo Rivola is an ex-Ferrari Formula One guy. He knows how to run that kind of unit.
The guy thought it was stupid for Ferrari to pass on Kimi Antonelli. And on current evidence, it was.
Yeah, it's almost like Massimo Rivolta knows what he's doing.
Home for troubled Italians.
Apparently so.
Right now, the only trouble Kimi Antonelli has is getting off the line, because once he gets going, oh mama.
Yeah, that boy fast. But yeah, like Aprilia, all that cumulative work is coming together now, and we're seeing them genuinely give Ducati a bloody nose. Ducati, it feels like they peaked with the GP24, and ever since then, for the last year and change, they've been trying to figure out how to make that bike faster, and every time they do, it's like development whack-a-mole. When they think they've solved one problem, a new one pops up in its place, and
it's Red Bull. It's Red Bull in 2024, where the RB20 kicks off the year blowing the field away in 2024, and then you have kind of a 1-2-3 punch of McLaren finally hits the nail on the head with development. At the same time, Red Bull brings a further botched development that had already kind of been brewing under the scenes. At the same time that later in the season, Ferrari also gets their ducks in a row with the car and comes back after losing their way. And it's not so much like, this year's Red Bull doesn't look so good so far. I called that one wrong in the preseason testing. I think we all did.
Pierre Waché wasn't lying.
If anything, he might have been understating it. It wasn't so much that it was getting slow as that it was getting harder and harder to drive, where even mercurial talent behind the wheel or on the handlebars is having a difficult time extracting the most out of it. And Ducati, because of the concession system, they can't take big swings at it. They don't have the means to. And we even saw even the GP23, dominant championship motorcycle, had rideability problems that we found out in the next year because they nailed the GP24 so hard that the GP23 was no longer competitive in most hands.
It was obsolete. It was 3 tenths a lap slower. So Ducati's been trying to basically improve on perfection for a year and a half, and they've not been able to do it, and now it's starting to hurt them because Aprilia and to a degree KTM have closed that gap. It's
KTM in one man's hands, maybe.
KTM only in Pedro Acosta's hands, but Pedro Acosta is quick. We all know that. Shame for him. Not only did he have the tire pressure penalty, he also deliberately gave up second to Martin because he had the warning light came up on the dash because KTM didn't think he was going to be in such open air.
I hate these fucking tires so much.
It's the fucking worst. I can't stand it.
Tires. And I don't know, people, F1 fans are right to bitch about Pirelli sometimes, but my God, I cannot wait for Pirelli to get here next year because their bike tires are it. And if anyone in MotoGP is intelligent, they give Pirelli as much testing time as they need. Because if I was to single out one area where I cannot stand these bikes, more than the ride height devices, more than the wings, it's these friggin' tires.
And you never hear a complaint about Pirelli and World Superbikes. They are the current World Superbikes tire supply, and I've never heard a bad word said about them ever in that series. The riders love them over there.
If anything, the qualifying tires are too good because sometimes they'll lull you into a false sense of security.
Yeah, they have too much grip, which is a weird thing to say about a MotoGP tire, but those tires are so sticky. On some tracks, they're within a second of MotoGP bikes now, which is just crazy.
For a $40,000, basically cost-capped motorcycle. Because let's be real, they're barely road bikes anymore. They're race bikes with license plates, but they are cost-capped for that reason.
We live in a world where
you get a blank check.
We live in a world where Ducati and Aprilia have $150,000 homologation specials. They launched the same weekend.
That Superleggera V4 is the silliest motorcycle I've ever seen. It's got carbon ceramics on a road bike.
Carbon ceramic brakes on a 245 horsepower road bike. Road bike in inverted commas.
Yeah, it's a road bike in the same way that Porsche 962C is a road car.
Cam,
it's got leather.
Cam, the bike weighs 165 kilos. That means you're talking nearly 1,500 brake horsepower per ton on the road.
Yeah, you can go for a nice scenic mountain ride on that thing.
What? Stupid.
The mountain in this case is Pikes Peak.
Stupid sport.
Ridiculous bikes.
Stupid.
Yeah, I love it. It is just pure two-wheeled smut from the folks over in Bologna. Mm-hmm. But it's these freaking tires. But also a case with KTM. Very fast for the first 3/4 of the race, and then Pedro kind of fell off a cliff at the end. Which is the inverse of Enea Bastianini, who actually had a somewhat decent weekend for the first time in quite a while. Because he didn't stink up the joint in qualifying.
It's weird in that whenever Enea doesn't just have an outright awful week, if he clicks with a track on that bike, he is as fast as anybody. Like, the old Ducati Enea is still there. But it's such a narrow operator. Remember Renault last year? Where Enea was like tracking for a podium and then he crashed in the race? So I was just like...
Where was that all year?
Where was that? Where's that been for the last 6 months? Because we know Enea Bastianini is an incredibly talented bike racer. Like, he had a championship campaign 5 years ago on that Ducati. Like, we know he is good. Like, I don't... KTM is... KTM has all the talent in the world, and they still have one decent rider that can produce on that weird-ass bike whenever it wants. And occasionally it will get two.
Well, and to that effect, Maverick Vinales had to pull out of the weekend because a chunk of screw from his shoulder repair came loose. You can go find it if you're not squeamish on the socials, because he did post it.
It was a clean break. The screw had snapped in two.
Yeah, the jagged bit, not the bit with the screw head.
You know what's funny about that? He said that his shoulder was perfect after because he had a pre-season crash. Over, I want to say, I can't remember where it was. I think it was in Sepang. He had a crash where he landed on that shoulder. The screw, as we now know, broke off from that crash, and he said the shoulder was perfect. No, it wasn't.
No. He's slowly turning into Danny Pedrosa. He's more titanium than man.
Poor man. I mean... Where else do you want to go? I mean, before we move on real quick, shout out to Ayagura one more time as well. Ayagura has been so good
this weekend. He was so fast. Better than his debut weekend, honestly. But again, engine electronic issue. And we saw it. Like, he was putting moves on people. He was off screen for a little bit. And then we saw that the blue bike on the side of the road trailing off and slow. And the whole Discord call all collectively groaned.
He's finished top 6 in everything, race and sprint so far this season until then. Everybody thought this was going to be the Raul Fernandez step-up year. This has been
Ayagura.
It's been Ayagura, and it's not just him being a Buriram merchant anymore. He's now fast everywhere. And he's been sometimes the second best Aprilia on that bike, and he's earning himself a second contract the way he's riding right now, because he's been immense so far. That would have been a top 4 at worst if he's able to finish that race.
He has the pace for the podium.
Absolutely. The move he put on this year at turn 12, he was side by side all the way through the apex.
Broke his ankles.
Oh, man. Absolutely quality. Shout out to Ayagura. Ridiculous pace. Also, before we get out of here as well, a load of silly season rumors to get through as well, because there was a big boatload of stuff to get through over the last week or so. The big one is that Honda has pretty much now made it abundantly clear they want 6 bikes on the grid next year. They're now looking for a way in. Now, allegedly, they did have conversations with Gresini about having Gresini go back to Honda for the first time in about a decade or so as a customer. A reason being that Nadia Padovani, who runs Gresini, was pissed that Ducati have snagged Firmin Aldeguer out from underneath them. The story we talked about at Brazil, it looks like Aldeguer is going to VR46 next year because, for those who don't know, VR46 is the official customer team of Ducati. They are first in line. Allegedly, Firmin wanted to stay at Gresini, but Ducati is moving him over. Padovani was apparently so pissed. She apparently flirted with Honda as a negotiation tactic. It looks like Gresini will stay with Ducatis, but the camp was not impressed with Ducati's man management. Not the first time we've heard that about Ducati over the last few years.
Especially when Gresini have been their best customer team for the last 2 years. Well,
Alex Marquez. I mean, it's a weird one because Alex Marquez has been a bit, I wouldn't say anonymous, but he's not been what he was last year with Gresini.
I call him anonymous so far this year. He's just been like back half of the top 10, just kind of there.
He's been there. There's been nothing exceptional about him this season because now we have expectations with Alex Marquez because he was runner-up last year and won a boatload of races, won 2 Grand Prix and I think it was 3 sprints as well last year. So we now have an expectation with Alex to continue finishing in the top 5, and right now he's not even been the second best Duke because Digi has been better than him on the same machine. So it's not ideal for them. And Firmin's got a pass because he's coming off a broken leg, but it's not ideal in that Gresini camp at all. But if Honda can't get Gresini to switch, the other way in might be Tech 3.
Which makes a certain degree of sense when you consider KTM and their parent looking to cut costs, but not wanting to get out of it entirely. Well,
it's a good compromise.
Yeah, given that Tech 3 is just a second factory team for them, as opposed to a true customer. So it makes a degree of sense. Be very weird, given Tech 3 once upon a time was the factory Yamaha team.
Yeah.
Long time ago, near the end of the 2-stroke era. Very weird. But if you want 6 bikes, and I mean, Honda has gotten on board with the idea of lots of bikes, lots of data helps you develop quicker, and they're going to need that going into the 850cc era. And Johan Mir is not helping them get any data with all the crashes he keeps having on the Honda.
Tell him how you feel.
It's probably a good idea.
So tell him how you feel about it.
That's
you can't
Raptor's
see
head. That's Raptor's head I'm punching right now.
For those who are not keeping score at home, 35 DNFs for Johan Mir in 60 Honda Grand Prix.
Johan Mir, get the fuck off my motorcycle.
If you include...
I'm so over it.
If you include the sprints, that is 53 out of 116 total races that Johan Mir has DNF'd since joining Honda. It's nearly 50%.
I have surpassed the stages of grief, and now I'm just in the stage of rage.
2 DNFs in the sprint, one in the sprint, one in the Grand Prix. The sprint, he was running a net 4th. He would have had a podium finish if it wasn't for the fact he went for a Hail Mary lunge at turn 1, tucked the front, and crashed.
It was never going to happen. It was never going to happen. It was never coming from that far back to make that pass. Never, ever.
Not even that. The fact that if he doesn't go for it, he takes a sprint podium because he didn't know that Acosta had a penalty incoming for tyre pressures. And then he bins it early on in the Grand Prix itself as well, when he was running in P6. And it's just... These are great points for Honda. He's clearly the fastest Honda by a mile. If he toned it down 1 notch, he'd be their best rider by a distance. Yeah.
Marco Simoncelli quote. You're at an 11. If you toned it down to a 9 consistently, you would be great. I'd so much rather he be running 8th or 9th. And finish and get the points than have him running 5th or 6th and crash every fucking weekend.
He's a top 8 rider when he's not tucking the front. Easy.
He doesn't tuck the front.
Anyway, I mean, if Johan Mir is coming away from Honda, which is looking apparently likely. It could be a Trackhouse reunion over with Davide Brivio over at Trackhouse with Mir. Apparently for Fernandez, could be happening. We'll have to wait and see. Honda's already got their next target penciled in. He's magic, you know. His name is David Alonso.
Yay.
Look, that boy nice, okay? That boy very nice.
That boy can be as nice as any boy has ever niced. Honda still has a lot of shit to get together.
It's interesting that they took Diogo Moreira on as a project, and he's been very solid so far with LCR.
So far. He has been their second most consistent rider. It's been him and Marini just back end of the points, just taking him off.
I feel bad for Marini that he might very well lose his job, and he's been nothing but a loyal soldier to Honda his whole time there. I didn't even realize the man was learning Japanese just so he could try and give feedback to the engineers better. That's how dedicated Luca Marini has been to this Honda project. He has he's an exemplary human being. Like, that is a man you would want to ride for your racing team. Everything I've ever heard about Marini is that he's one of the most consummate stand-up professionals in that paddock, and
probably gonna have no job out of it.
Allegedly, Yamaha might come sniffing for him.
Oh, don't subject him to that.
He doesn't deserve that, quite frankly.
He deserves so much better than that piece of junk.
But the rumors are David Alonso to the factory Honda team alongside Quartararo, which, look, that is a very tasty fucking team.
It's got every ingredient but the bike, and the bike is so bad, none of it's going to matter.
For those who missed the Moto2 race, David Alonso was going to start that race on pole. It would have been his first Moto2 pole position, but it was disqualified from Q2 because the tyre pressures were out. Stop us if you heard that one this weekend.
Oh my God.
He was 0.01 bars over. As small a gap as it could be, and he was disqualified from the session, so he had to start 18th, and he finished 4th in a 10-lap reduced distance race. Because that was a big red flag for a very, very horrible crash at the bottom of the turn 11 hill. I think it was Fernandez who had to take an evasive action to get out of the way of a bike in the braking zone, and the bike was a torpedo at that apex and wiped out, I think it was 7 riders, including himself. Somehow,
very lucky. We have very lucky everyone ended up being, generally speaking, okay.
I genuinely cannot believe everybody walked away from that. It was a horrifying crash. I watched it live. It is one of the most horrifying crashes I've ever watched live. And somehow everybody walked away. It's a miracle. Do not go out of your way to find this. Don't.
Thankfully, one of those, it looked a lot worse than it was, but it still looks bad enough that I wouldn't recommend it.
Live at full speed, I was like, I've never sworn so loud in my life. And I'm 33 years of age and I've been watching bikes for 25 years. Very, very lucky boy. But Alonso looks real good. It looks like his Aspar teammate, Danny Holgado, could be going to Gresini, another very talented young man. Alongside a possible return for Enea Bastianini.
Home for hyped but not quite top tier prospects.
Is it next door to Massimo Rivola's home? Is it like next door to Massimo Rivola's home for troubled Italians?
Pecco Bagnaia better hope that home does exactly what it says above the door.
Yes, it's Massimo Rivola's home of unfortunate friends. But yeah, I like Holgado as well. I think he's a very talented young rider. He won 2 races as a Moto2 rookie last year. The Aspar boys are apparently KTM have been sniffing around them as well. Like Pit Bearer said openly during Friday practice, we've offered them both contracts. But he openly said, I don't think we're going to get him because the whole grid wants them, is what he basically said. It was just, I admire Pitt's honesty, if nothing else, or he was just like, listen, He's given them contracts, but
we'll try.
they're probably not taking them because, they think that it's looking like Holgado's going to go to Gresini, which is a fantastic landing spot for him. And alongside Bastianini, who, again, multiple MotoGP race winner in that Gresini camp, title contender in 2021. Why not bring Bastianini back?
He needs off that KTM.
Yeah.
He and that bike were never going to gel and have not.
Yeah. It's the ideal landing spot. We know, as a proven commodity, how fast Enea is on a Ducati. Bring him back to the guy that won you your first Grand Prix with Nadia Arizona. Why not? Right? You know, I don't, there's no better fit available. I still think Yamaha would do a job for somebody out there. It's just for raw talent. But I would rather take Bastianini at this point in their respective careers, given I know what he can do on a Duke. He was still fourth in the championship in 2024, his last season with the team, with multiple wins that season. That's plenty. Especially given we now know that Alex Marquez is almost certainly going to KTM. The reason why, for those asking why we haven't had any of these deals announced yet, there was a meeting between the IRTA, the manufacturers, and Liberty Media. This weekend in Austin, there is apparently good progress towards a Concord agreement coming through in a Concord-esque agreement, I think is the language that people have used in the coming weeks and months. And I think, let's just say, Massimo Rivola pissed off a lot of people when he announced that Bez was signing early. That was before the season had even started. The wedding photos you may have seen on social media. Apparently, Massimo pissed off a lot of people because he wasn't supposed to announce that so soon. Now they've got to renegotiate all this contract language, and there's also the talk that there's going to be a minimum salary of 500,000 euros for the year for MotoGP riders now, regardless of team. So that means more pay, more contract language. This is all technical legal jargon that takes time to ratify and iron out. So in case you're wondering where you're waiting for the domino to fall, that's the reason why. It's all legal mumbo jumbo, as the kids would say, until that gets ironed out. That's about it for us on this pod. MotoGP is not going to be back for a little while. We're still 3 weeks away before the next race, the Spanish Grand Prix at Jerez. If Aprilia wins that one, then cancel Christmas. We're probably done here. That might be the last box on the register to tick. The most conventional track of them all on the MotoGP calendar. And if Aprilia takes that, then everybody can pretty much look out. Bez, not only a 5-of-a-kind winner, the only man in MotoGP history to win 5 in a row while leading every single lap in the process. It is a great...
Very lucky that does not include sprint laps.
Hey, it worked out all right for Pecco in the end. Oh, wait, it didn't. Anyway.
No, it did not.
We'll be back next week for a Q&A special on Motorsport 101. Until then, I've been Dre Harrison. They've been Cameron Buckley. Thank you very much for listening and watching along, and we'll catch you guys next week. Till then, sayonara.
Get this man off my motorcycle.
I love that Cam was really trying to think hard of a closing line, and he just didn't have one this week.
No, that's all it's just tunnel vision on hating this man at this point.